And welcome to another episode of the Bandit Room. My name is Charles, and I'm joined here in the studio today by Mr. Caleb.
Hello.
Thank you. And across the table, we have a couple distinguished guests with us today. Miss Harriet and Martin Goode. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
It's interesting, you know, you guys are, particularly Harriet, you're a pillar of the creative community here in Rock Hill, and Martin, you're just a pillar of the community in general. But I first met you a few years back. It was pre-pandemic. I want to say 2019, perhaps.
Yes.
It was an interesting occasion for your theatrical debut, and also you claim it's your retirement.
Oh, absolutely.
That was a fun time. We were doing a little production of Love Letters by A.R. Gurney, and you two just knocked it out of the park. I believe it was Valentine's Day, the one that you performed. So
it was a fun experience for Martin and me.
Now, that's not your primary occupation, though, as an actor. Let's talk a little bit about what you're primarily known for as being an artist. So how long ago have you begun to explore the field of art, or how early did that start for you?
Honestly, Charles, I can't remember a day in my life when I didn't do something that was artsy.
Right.
I drew with my crayons.
Yeah.
And I made things in Daddy's shop with him. He taught me to use a lathe.
Okay.
And so from a very early age, I was exposed to a lot of different art thoughts and thinking.
Awesome. And where did you grow up? Was it here in Rock Hill or nearby?
Grew up right here in Rock Hill.
Right here in Rock Hill. Fantastic. And Martin, did you?
Grew up in a wonderful town of Covington, Georgia.
Covington, Georgia. What brought you here?
A degree in chemical engineering from Georgia Tech.
Okay.
And a job offer from Celanese Fibers.
Gotcha.
Which was the most fortunate thing that has ever happened in my life, thanks to later on meeting Harriet.
How did you two meet?
We met at a cocktail party one Christmas.
Okay. Here in Rock Hill?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
Many years ago.
So the Celanese fiber plant. So that's obviously the namesake of the road that we're on right here, Celanese. So,
yes.
Yeah, tell us about that. So what was that like in its heyday?
It was a nationally known chemical-based corporation located now where Riverwalk is. Mm-hmm. We made mostly man-made fibers, starting with cellulose, so hence the name Celanese. Mm-hmm. So it was a good company to work for, and they did good career planning and good retirement planning.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate.
Very nice. Harriet, let's talk a bit about your work. So you said you've always been involved in art creatively. At what point did you make a decision that that's what you're going to do full time, or whatever it may be?
When I was about 12 or 13, all I drew was women or girls wearing beautiful dresses. Uh-huh. And often my mother could find enough patterns to sort of copy my designs, and she would make my dresses.
Okay, like the way a designer works,
yes,
as far as for
exactly.
For yeah.
And then I bought a little teeny sewing machine. It was a Singer Featherweight. I still have it.
Oh, nice.
And started making my own clothes from my designs. And then when it was time to start thinking about college, I said, I'm going to the Women's College of North Carolina, which is now, of course, part of University of North Carolina.
Okay.
Back in those days, it was just called the Women's College because they had a degree in fashion design. I said, I'm going to be Coco Chanel Jr. And my daddy said, no, you're not going there. That's too big. You'd get lost.
Okay.
He said, you can go to Winthrop, to Queens, or to Converse. And I chose Converse.
Gotcha.
My sister was a student there at the time. My grandmother and an aunt had graduated from Converse. And so it seemed kind of natural. And also, it was the farthest away from Rock Hill, which I hate to admit now, but that was part of my thinking. And
sure.
It was a one-professor department, and he was a portrait painter. And so he hired students, and so we sat there and we painted portraits of fellow students.
Okay.
And our art labs were either 2 or 3 hours long, 3 days a week. And so I was truly immersed by then in figure painting.
Okay. And now, when I think of your work, that is primarily what I think of as your figurative work. But you have a wide variety of styles. You have figurative, you do non-representation or landscapes. You've also gotten into wearable art, I believe. Is that an original piece you're wearing right now?
It is.
Okay. I was going to guess that. So when did you decide to, so you figurative, would you say that's your primary love, figurative painting?
Well, I have branched out a good bit, as you are aware, but I guess I still fall back on figure painting when I'm just sort of at a loss for something to do. I'll sit down with a sketchbook and I'll just draw from my head.
Right.
And it's always just my imaginary sisters.
Yeah. That's what you call them.
Yeah.
Your sisters.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
As a creative person, what would you say your style is, or the way you work? Are you in the studio every day, or is it more of a loose schedule as to how you work?
Well, it's looser now than it used to be.
Yeah.
I used to be in the studio every single day from about 9 o'clock to about 5 or 5:30.
Gotcha.
And I've got a minor back problem
Okay.
that has shortened my schedule a little bit.
Okay.
But I've done so many things besides the art that I do now. There was an independent ad agency in Rock Hill owned and managed by Laura O'Neill Latham.
Okay.
And she asked me to please be her advertising artist. So I said, heck yeah, that'd be fun. And we had fun together.
Nice.
And we designed a couple of logos for a couple of local businesses. Huh. And then I have taught art in a private school and around my kitchen table. Oh, I was advertising director of Rock Hill National Bank.
Oh, my goodness.
Very
Advertising and public relations.
Rock Hill National Bank. So is that the one that was where Amelie's is now?
Well,
Or is
it
that...
started out in that building.
Okay.
And it was called Rock Hill National, and the building, and some
Right.
people still do. That building originally was the Citizens Bank.
Right.
And then in about the early to mid-'70s, Rock Hill National built the Williamsburg-style building that's on the corner
Oh,
of
okay.
Oakland and Maine.
Gotcha. The one that used to be Bank of America and then
It was
South State.
it was Rock Hill National first.
Gotcha.
And then Bank of America bought it. And that's when I got a real honest-to-goodness studio, not in our laundry room. but I worked at the bank, and I was aware of this building next door.
Yeah.
It's actually where Overhead Station is now.
Okay.
But back in those days, there was a barber shop in this part of that building that was right next to the alleyway.
Yeah.
And then the other part had been a dress shop, a hat shop, all kinds of things.
Interesting.
And about the time I was ready to quit working at the bank, and that was about the day that we made the last tuition to Presbyterian College for our baby girl. And so I went to Frank Robards and said, the building next door is vacant, and Betty Gatewood Roddy and I would like to rent it as our studio. He said, oh, my dear, you don't have to rent it. You can just have it. And I said, nope, Frank. I'll pay for it. We'll pay $100 a month. And
Nice.
so Betty Gatewood paid $100 one month, and I'd pay it the next month.
Okay.
And it was a shambles of a place. It had no heat, no air conditioning. So we had our little kerosene heaters and our big oscillating fans. And then when Rock Hill National was sold to Bank of America, the local CEO came to visit me in the studio, and he said, Sister, you've got to move. I'll tell you about my nickname in a minute.
Uh-oh.
And I said, well, Mike, I can't move. The Arts Center will be finished in about 2 years, so I'll stay for 2 more years, then you can have it back.
Gotcha.
He said, well, I'll have to see about that. He came back the next day after speaking with Hugh McCall.
Okay.
And Hugh McCall's wife and I had been good friends in college. But anyway, Hugh McCall told Mike, the CEO at that time, that if I found a place that he would pay for my move. And so then I knew if Mr. McCall had spoken those words, this was the end. This was serious. And so I had friends at City Hall, and I called up one of them and I said, I've got to find a place to move. So she found, the Citizens Bank where Amelie's is now had recently been purchased by a developer. His name was Bob Eisel. I remember him well. And he had already started gutting it to get ready to make it into what he called an A-plus or A1 office building. And so he said, you can have the whole top floor. He said, it's in shambles. You know, they'd already ripped out everything except the lovely marble powder room. And so when we agreed that I would move in there, she again said, you know, you don't have to pay for it. I said, nope. $100.
Pretty good deal for the whole top floor.
It was, because it's a huge space.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of windows were out. There were dead animals and all that. And so a couple of my buddies from the bank came over and helped clean it up.
Nice.
That's cool.
They went to Lowe's and bought lathing strips and heavy plastic to put on the windows that were blown out.
Wow.
So that I wouldn't have any more pigeons coming to visit. And I was there for 2 years. It was
nice.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I would have stayed if the Arts Council hadn't come along. But anyway.
We were also in that building for about 2 years. Or
Oh, you
maybe
were?
It was 3. We were on the second floor.
Okay.
For about 13 to 15-ish, that neighborhood. Yeah. Different time period.
Yeah.
But it was already pretty well fixed up by that point. So it's a good spot. So you've been here for a lot of changes throughout Rock Hill's time.
Indeed.
So you've seen the roof go up over Main. You saw the roof go down over Main. You've seen a lot of other things. What are some things that you look back on and miss about sort of the older era of Rock Hill? Is it sort of maybe from an architectural standpoint of old homes that are no longer around, or any sort of examples of sort of a old-timey community feel that you might not get?
Well, yeah, a lot of houses have been torn down.
Right.
Some of it is really okay.
Yeah.
But some houses on Oakland Avenue, which were really spectacular, are no longer there. As a matter of fact, Betty Gatewood's grandparents lived in the house on the corner of Oakland and Wilson, right across the street from the Picks. That's another thing I missed, the Picks.
Yeah.
And it had an elevator in it.
So it's not the Cherry House you're referring to.
No.
That was across the street, right?
Right, and the Cherry House, too.
Yeah.
And, of course, that stone wall
is still there.
was still there,
Yeah.
We used to sit on that stone wall to watch parades.
Nice.
But
across the street from it, you said your friend's grandmother?
Yeah. The Roddies lived there.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't in their house very much, but they had a little apartment in their house, and they rented it to Mr. Farrow, who at that time was manager of Belk's.
Okay. Oh, was the Belk's downtown at that
yes,
point? Okay,
that was the only one.
Gotcha.
But Mr. Farrow had horses.
Gotcha.
And he used to let me come over, and I would use his curry comb, and I'd brush the horses. I never rode one.
Nice.
He never offered me that ride. but we had a farm, and we had horses, and turkeys and peach trees, and a little cabin by a little lake.
Nice. So you recall the days of the Picks, going to the theater down there?
Oh, child, yes.
Yeah.
The Picks was beautiful, and it was clean because they did not allow us to bring Coca-Colas or donuts or anything. So
well, that's different. They didn't sell them there either, or did they?
No, indeed.
No,
they prohibited it.
This is a theater. This is for watching movies.
That's right. And Bobby Bryant, who was a friend of Daddy's, built it. He had it designed. It was pure Art Deco. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Bobby Bryant also was a pilot.
Oh, okay.
And Bryant Field, our local airport, is named for Bobby Bryant.
Gotcha. Now, Martin, you used to fly as well. Is that right?
Yes, but didn't Bob Bryant set some sort of record of flight across the country or something?
He probably did, but I don't remember that specifically.
He did something that was notable and got the airport named in his honor.
Oh, wow, okay.
But, and so over 53 years ago, when Harriet and I were dating, I was taking flying lessons. Yeah. And so got my private license, and then kept working until I got a commercial license. Okay. And that just simply means that I could fly for hire on any aircraft that I was checked out on. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean I can go jump on a Delta jet and take off. But those were fun days, and so Harriet, better known as Sister, and our 3 children loved to fly. Yeah. My parents at that time lived in Covington, Georgia, my former hometown. And so instead of a 4-hour drive, we would load 3 children and a poodle into the back seat of a Cessna one. Well, no, the Cessna
You were doing
Cardinal.
the 210 by then.
Yeah.
Oh, Cardinal, yeah.
And fly down to Covington.
Oh, nice.
And my dear mother's first airplane ride was with me.
And only.
She did the white knuckle treatment, but she was brave, and we had a nice brief flight around the Covington airport.
Nice.
But anyway, so flying was a fun part of our life, and we were lucky that Sister's father had a little beach house down at Garden City Beach.
Oh, nice.
And we would fly to the nearby Myrtle Beach Airport and
And rent a car.
Yep.
Well, that's the way to do it.
Those were fun days. And I don't know if you remember this, but it's been 25 or 30, longer ago than that. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was in the newspaper and all over the news that a couple was flying, and the wife was sitting in the co-pilot seat, as I always did, and the guy had a heart attack and died.
Oh, gosh.
And she knew enough about using the radio so that she started sending out SOS messages.
Yeah.
And a pilot from the nearest small airport at that time flew up and flew beside her and started giving her directions for landing.
Wow.
And of course, she had been in the plane when her husband had landed. I don't know how many times.
Sure.
And after that, I said, Martin, I'm going to take flying lessons.
Yeah.
And I did. I took 4 hours with Sina Stone,
Okay.
who was a woman pilot.
Yeah.
And so she said, okay, climb in the pilot seat. And I said, no, I'll climb in the co-pilot seat because if Martin drops dead,
You won't be in the pilot seat.
that's
at
where
that
I'll
point.
be. And so I had 4 hours, learned not to land beautifully, but learned to land and walk away from it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Would
Now,
you like to tell them a little bit more about your fourth generation back family? People?
Well, Wells Fargo
Gotcha.
is located in the former Freedom's department store.
Okay, the one on downtown on the corner there. Gotcha. Freedoms.
And Freedoms.
Gotcha.
Friedheim. They're my ancestors, and they
Okay.
moved to this country in the middle to late 1800s, but they were in the dry goods business, and so they built this store, mostly granite.
It's a beautiful building.
It is a gorgeous building, and I
Yeah.
used to love it.
Yeah.
It had everything from feed and seed and saddles to fine women's clothes, baby clothes, men's clothes, hats, everything. They had a system where the sales ladies did not have to make change. There was a little system where I called it the mouse.
Gotcha.
It was a little track, and the sales lady would put the money in the little mouse and put it on the track. And I guess this was the precursor of
Pneumatic tubes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Martin.
There was a chain driven, it pulled the little carts along up to the cashier's cage
Okay.
up on the mezzanine floor.
Oh, my goodness.
And the cashier was Miss Nellie.
Okay.
And then she would make the change and put it all back in there.
Oh, my goodness. So it's
But-
little systems going back and forth.
But another thing I loved about Freedoms, besides getting pretty clothes, it was also my bank.
Gotcha.
If I was downtown and I wanted to go to the 10-cent store, I would walk in, and either Miss Edith or Miss Frances would be there. And I'd say, Miss Edith, can you please give me 25 cents? I'm going to the 10-cent store.
Gotcha.
And of course, she would just put it on my mother's little tab.
Gotcha.
So,
How about that?
That was your local bank.
It was.
That's your local
It
bank.
truly was.
So, here's an interesting connection. So you're working out of the Rock Hill Artist Collective, at least spending part of your time there.
Yes.
That's in our old office, their old
That's right.
office downtown. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have the space go up the stairs and to the right. Is that still
I
your
did.
spot?
I had that spot for about a year.
Gotcha.
And then when I no longer could spend much time down there,
Gotcha.
I felt selfish in having a spot that I seldom used.
Taking a big spot.
And so now I have a smaller spot down in the lower level,
Okay.
and I just have a display.
Nice. I was going to make the joke that you had Aggie's old office. So
Oh, that was Aggie's office.
office.
Oh, heck, I might move back up there.
Yeah, the CEO location there. That's cool.
Yeah, and if you have the basement, you in the basement or on the first floor?
In the basement.
Yeah, you might
We
have.
call it the lower level.
Okay,
Lower level.
Okay, lower level. That's fair. That's fair. Well, you might have
we did
where
that
I
too.
started. My first office was down there, so
Oh, really?
you might be. I don't know. I haven't been in.
Are you on the
but-
left side or the right side? when you go
Coming down the steps, I'm on the left side.
Yep, that's
Okay.
right. I was
That's
right.
where
in
you
on
were.
that.
Really? Oh, that's great. Now, were you in the glassed-in part that's lockable?
That was-
just a conference room.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a cool history on that one. Did
Yeah.
did you frequent that building when it was whatever it was before?
It was
I
a
can't remember.
furniture store.
Furniture store.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes,
was
I did.
Was it a 5 and dime as well, or
No.
It was always furniture.
Well, as far back as I can
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
it was always furniture.
Okay.
More furniture, I believe.
Gotcha. No, sister.
Yeah.
Sister. Where did that come from? So,
Oh, my
to
goodness.
many people, that's how you were introduced to me. A
Yeah.
mutual friend, Holly Christopher, said,
Yeah.
"Hey, contact Sister Good," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, all right." Well, I
Well,
don't know
it's-
if I get to call her sister or not, but
Please do. And some people think that we have to have known each other for many years before.
Right.
But the older I get, the dearer my silly nickname is, and I'll tell you how that came about.
Yeah.
My sister Jeannie, who was a fabulous painter, was 4 years old when I was born. She had beautiful blonde hair, gorgeous blue eyes, and they called her the Princess, capital T, capital P. And she was the first grandchild on both sides, and she was the only child among my parents' friends. They would come pick her up on Sunday afternoon and take her out for ice cream. And it was special. She was very, very special. And so when my grandmother came, and she said, "Jeannie, you have a baby sister." She said, "I didn't ask for one,"
Meaning you?
meaning me.
Meaning you.
And so my grandmother said, "And her name is Harriet." And she said, that's not right. My mother's name is Harriet.
Oh.
And so she called me the baby. And then she called me, the day I went to kindergarten, she said, "We can drop the baby. She's a big girl now."
Okay.
So we were sitting on the floor in our little kindergarten room, which was in what's now called the Withers building. At that time, it was Winthrop Training School. And so we're all sitting around on our little mats on the Miss Murrah's kindergarten, and she was calling the roll. She looked at me and she said, "When teacher calls your name, you say, 'Here, teacher.'" And I said, "You didn't call my name." And she said, "What is your name?" I said, "Sister Marshall." She called my mother. And, of course, I don't really know what she said or how my mother responded. But knowing my mother, she said, I'm sure she just laughed and hooted. So anyway,
That's funny.
most people did not know my name.
Yeah.
My name was Sister.
So that's your entire childhood.
My entire
You just went
life.
by Sister.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
In college, I was Sister.
Yeah. So when did Harriet come back?
I guess when I moved to another town.
When
and
you
it
got
was-
married, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
to sign some official documents for the government.
Right, yeah.
Couldn't say
Well,
Sister.
and Celanese moved us around 3 times,
Okay.
and when we are meeting nice people in the new town, I hate to say, "This is my wife's sister."
And they say, "Well, where's your wife?"
So,
But
anyway.
even in some of the towns that we moved in, we made such close friends and they would hear Martin call me Sister, and they would call me
Right.
Sister as well.
Nice. That's cool. That's cool. Where'd y'all move around? Where'd y'all go?
On one fateful afternoon, I got home on a weekday afternoon, and I said, "Let's fix a drink."
Mhm.
And she said, "We don't usually have a cocktail during the week." I said, "Well, maybe we need one today. I'm being transferred to New York."
Oh.
And she said, "Oh, well, you can commute." And I said, "Well, sweetheart, maybe some of the vice presidents get to fly on the company jet back and forth, but I can't do that. So we've got to move." And we found a wonderful lady realtor in Connecticut who did a marvelous job for us.
So you
But-
moved to Connecticut when you were working in New
lived
York?
in a little town of Weston.
Right outside Westport.
Okay.
And
we had a certain famous neighbor.
yeah, Paul Newman lived right
What?
around the
Whoa.
corner.
Whoa.
No way.
And he would come to the little coffee shop in our town center. We didn't have a real downtown. It
Yeah.
was just a little burg. But our realtor did tell us that Paul Newman would come to this coffee shop every Saturday morning.
Oh,
And she
goodness.
said, "You can go in there and you can speak and say hello,
Yeah.
but don't make a fool of yourself." and so I did go in and spoke to him a few times. Just good
Yeah,
morning.
just
I
casual.
never even said Paul or Mr.
Right.
Newman. Just say good morning.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
Wow.
And then we moved to Dalton, Georgia, and then we moved back to Rock Hill.
Okay. All right. All right.
Mhm.
And may I editorialize one more bit, because Sister would love to comment on this too.
Mm-hmm.
We feel so fortunate that the city of Rock Hill has had very good city government for many years.
Mm.
We remember so fondly Betty Jo Ray, who was
Mhm.
a personal friend, and then Doug Eccles,
Mhm.
and now John Geddes. and also many of the city council people. And the guy who was city manager for about 3 terms is now a partner of ours downtown, is Joe Lanford.
Yeah.
He was city manager. And Joe is this creative, inventive visionary who designed so much good around the town. You know, Dave Lyle Boulevard to connect the new interstate then to downtown and so forth. So.
And I remember one other thing that was pivotal in our lives when they were making plans to revitalize downtown and take the roof off and tear down the building that was at the end of Main Street blocking the continuing street. They had meetings, and Martin and I attended most of them, but the most wonderful meeting we attended was with Joe Lanford, and he showed slides. This is way before the modern things, but he showed slides of towns about the same size as Rock Hill in Europe that had businesses downstairs and people living above their business.
Gotcha.
He said, we can do that in Rock Hill. I said, we'll do that if we can have the top floor of the People's Bank building and a garden on the roof. Martin and everybody else looked at me like I had rocks for brains. and that was in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Was it, or early 90s?
Yeah. And here you are.
We've been there for 21 years.
Wow. Kira,
And every bit of it has just been wonderful. You've been there.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lovely spot. Lovely spot.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And,
you got the best view in the town.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
We truly do.
Yeah.
May I?
Yes.
You made me think of an interesting story that you should tell. When we first moved in, we decided to make the front 2/3 of our floor is our living space, and the back unit, which was a separate apartment built later, would be her studio.
Gotcha.
And so she had already decided to have a commercial gallery there. We were going to have her first exhibit, her first show, and she had sent out a couple of hundred postcards, invitations, and then 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And so her show was scheduled on the
For the
14th of
14th.
September, 3 days after 9/11. And so, but the next night, the president went on TV and said, folks, tomorrow night, I want you to get with people you love, light a candle, and sing God Bless America. And,
We still get emotional over that.
and one of our dear guests brought bags of little votive candles and gas lighters, and at 7 o'clock, we drank a lot more champagne and lit candles and sang God Bless America.
But before that, before 7 o'clock, you know, it had been a nice party, and people were greeting each other and talking quietly. But there was a pall over the whole atmosphere. But after we sang God Bless America and hugged and cried and carried on, everything changed. It was wonderful.
So I feel like now it's just really going crazy downtown. But those first 10 years, you guys were kind of the first ones to really move down there.
Well, Kinch and Joanne Edwards had moved in just a few months before we did.
Kinch, referring to Kinch's, like is that what you're saying?
Oh,
yeah. I miss that. I miss Kinch's.
Yeah, I do too.
So that was there. People think of downtown now as like there's a lot of little amenities, a lot of little restaurants, a lot of places to go. You guys were the first ones there. I don't think there would have been a store of any kind. Or
most of the buildings
restaurant.
were boarded up.
Right, right. That's wild.
And several businesses tried to make a go of it.
Yeah.
But they just was not. It was not the right time.
Yeah. I mean, we moved in 2013, which relatively recent, but I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot going on when we first came over. That was before Ameles. That was before, everything else, all the major development that's happening now with the giant. You're not the only skyscraper in town anymore. You got a few, you got a few 3 to 4 story buildings now. But yeah, it's really interesting to see that go.
Did you know that the IRS now requires all tax-exempt organizations to e-file their 990 tax forms? If you need to file a 990, check out expresstaxexempt.com, the quickest and easiest way to e-file your organization's 990 forms. Express Tax Exempt offers interview-style and form-based processes to accommodate 990 experts and newcomers alike. Plus, they make it easy to attach any required schedules, share the return with others in your organization for review, and they even offer live customer support. So go to expresstaxexempt.com now for the easiest 990 e-filing option.
Speaking of the art world, I don't know if we want to transition a little bit to our art game.
Yeah, let's do it. It's time for Ellsworth Kelly or Just a Shape, a game where we look at photos and try to tell if they're works of art by famous artists or just random things. What's that? Oh yes, we know you can't see the photos, and this isn't the best game for an audio podcast, and we're sorry. If you'll just please hold your angry comments, we will all get through this together.
So
Okay.
the game we've got here is Ellsworth Kelly or Just a Shape. So the background on it is, we thought we'd show images of like you're familiar with Ellsworth Kelly.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
He
Certainly.
generally works in. He's an interesting figure because people who aren't in the art world will see that and be like,
I
"What's the
could do
big
that."
deal? What's the big deal? It's just a
Uh-huh.
shape,
Yeah,
It's a
I
big
could
thing.
do that.
I could
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of argument. So we'll put some interesting works up here, and for this game, you can decide whether or not you think this is a reasonably priced artwork or an obscenely priced artwork.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
So
yeah.
All right.
that's sort of the way it goes.
So-
Well,
Yeah.
I would say it sold for multiple millions, and
If it's this one, yeah.
and
it's
worth
this
every
one, yeah,
worth every
probably.
penny of it.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
Ellsworth Kelly did things before anybody else did, and
Mhm.
if you think of it and you do it,
Yeah.
then it might not make a successful living for you at that time, but
Right.
eventually people will recognize
Yeah.
that he made a turning point.
Right.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
Ellsworth
Yeah.
Kelly was interesting.
Yeah,
Awesome.
well, speaking of,
This is our very first piece.
Our first piece is an Ellsworth Kelly. So,
So it sounds like you're gonna guess this is a
very high ticket.
This is a high
Very
ticket
high
item.
ticket. I
Yeah.
would say so. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're absolutely right. This one
Okay.
sold for
A
A little over
1.6
$1.5 million.
million and a half.
Yeah.
million and a half.
Well, that doesn't surprise me a bit.
I mean,
But if I would go home and imitate that,
right.
Right.
it would be, well, you're copying Ellsworth Kelly.
Right.
When Kyle Mosher, who's a muralist, was on,
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things we talked about was, people saying like, "Oh, I could do that," or "But you
Mhm.
can't come up with the idea. You can't be the first person who
Right. It's the
does that."
Right. If you could have done it, you did it. You would have done
You
it.
would have.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
So-
right, Caleb. And the first person who comes across with a new idea, something wonderful, something unique,
Mhm.
Mhm.
then they get the credit.
Yep, that's exactly.
But there are a lot of people who copy.
Yeah, that's true. All right, here's the next one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
he
is a-
makes these things that look like balloons. I can't say his name
Yeah.
right now.
It's like a silver bunny that we're
Uh-huh.
sculpture that we're looking at.
Yeah. I wouldn't want it in our collection, but I appreciate the value that it has,
Mhm.
and I know
Yeah.
that's probably multiple millions, too.
Yep.
It is.
Yep.
It
This
is.
one's actually, it set a record, I believe, when this one sold.
91 million.
Yes.
At the time, this was the most expensive piece sold by a living artist at the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a stainless steel inflatable bunny.
Yes. And nobody else has ever even tried to imitate that.
No, yeah. It's
No.
funny. Yeah, the last two guests we've had on have not been a fan of Jeff Koons, even though I'm always bringing it back to him because he's just such an interesting.
And it's not
Situation.
a very big
No, it's not
piece
huge.
either.
no,
Like
yeah.
it's pretty small.
Yeah.
just an
So it's
iconic
an
piece for him.
interesting- Yeah.
But he has made some large ones.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. So you think this is
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I can't tell you who it is, though.
Yeah.
right?
That's okay.
I think it's very interesting. I could look at it
It's sort of
for a long time.
fractally. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Geometric.
Triangles, lots of-
triangle thing.
Lots of colors.
Yeah, I don't usually try to find images, recognizable, nameable images in abstract or non-objective work.
Right.
But I can't help but see boxes and pyramids and,
Mhm.
and deep spaces and shallow spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way the colors are divided up.
Mhm.
If this was in an amateur show and I was the judge, I'd give it a nice award.
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
tell me it's millions of dollars.
Let's
No,
see where
this-
did this one fall?
Uh,
6,000? Well,
Yeah, this is
it's
a-
not.
That's nice.
It's not nothing.
A
Yeah.
local, I think, Charlotte artist.
Okay.
named
Okay.
Peter Marin.
I don't know
Okay.
him, but I like
So,
that.
Yeah. All right. Next one.
Now, I would say that this is done by probably a woman.
Mhm.
It looks like pastel. I think it's a nice painting, but I wouldn't value it in the thousands.
You're correct again.
You're got a
correct
good
again.
eye.
You're right
Oh,
on.
85.
Another local artist. I mean, and this is probably a small piece.
Yeah,
and
it's
this
probably
is
a small piece. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
whatever they.
Yeah, for
I can
$85,
buy.
it must be very small.
Yeah.
Hannah Singh, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another Charlotte artist.
I
But
don't know her name.
yeah. All right. Next one is another abstract.
That might really be fine, but I'm not drawn to it.
Yeah.
It's primary colors really, and very splattery.
Any guesses as to whether it's expensive or?
Goodness, it might hurt somebody's feelings.
I don't think so.
I would say it's affordable, and somebody who just is looking for, that's my color, I need that color.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the response of a lot of people.
Gotcha.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well,
This one may be surprising. This
one-
is $13 million.
around 13 million. This
Mercy.
one,
Do you know the size on this one?
it's
Oh.
big.
No, is it large?
It's
It's a
big.
large scale?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
whose
Yeah,
work is? Oh,
Gerhard
Gerhard
Richter.
Richter.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, that's
I was
why.
going to say when you were asking
His stuff
guesses
is all over the place,
about
though, because he can.
the value, is that we know that the world, and especially our country,
Yeah.
has a lot of multimillionaires
Yeah.
for whom collecting is a big thing,
Right.
and they are quite willing to let an exorbitant amount of money go to collect something by a famous constructor or artist or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I happen to take the Wall Street Journal, and in the Friday edition, they have a section called Mansion, and it's a complete rundown, not complete, of multi-million-dollar homes around the
Right.
country that have sold and who owned them and where they're located and so forth. But some of them are, as Harriet and I would say, pretty tacky. And some of the furnishings are outlandish.
Right.
But, a lot of people have more money than taste.
That's true. That's true. This is an interesting example. I like Gerhard Richter a lot. His paintings run the gambit. Some of his work is like this. Some of his work is photorealistic. So he's like all over the place. And he himself is like a vocal opponent of. He says a painting should not be worth as much as a house or something like that. I think he's had that quote before, which is nuts because his work can sell for crazy amounts. But
Yeah.
it is interesting what you're referring to, though, about how high end of the art market has become, a tool for the uber wealthy to.
And they're buying it as an investment, not because they
Right.
really love the art,
Right,
but
right.
they think it'll go up in value
That's
by
true.
millions.
Yeah.
And some of it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. I think in the long run, if it's a, good enough name, it's gonna stand the test of time. It's gonna keep improving in value.
All right, next one up.
Oh my goodness.
It's sort of, it's a lot of purple, almost collage looking.
Yeah, it's very collage looking. I imagine, don't you think it is a collage or maybe it's a painting?
It seems mixed media, maybe.
Well, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Like the Gerhard Richter, which I
Right.
thought was, amateurish. I kind of like this one, though.
Yeah.
All right,
Wanna give
Caleb,
some-
tell me
you want
about it.
Cool. Is it?
All right. So this one's
Okay.
another local artist named
Jen
Matthews.
Matthews.
So 1550 for this one, but yeah, I rather like it too.
Yeah.
It's true. All right, next one.
Oh, is that Motherwell?
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Yeah.
This is Motherwell, big.
We had a Motherwell.
Oh yes, Charles was mentioning this.
Yeah.
I had to throw this one in as a gimme
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
But so what's the story with the one you found?
Well, we went to an exhibition opening at a gallery in Charlotte,
Okay.
and he had a whole string of Motherwell, and Martin realized I really loved it, and so he bought it.
Nice.
And,
That's
But
awesome.
we have sold it to somebody else, and we found another person who really, really loved it.
Oh, good.
That's good.
What speaks to you about it when you look at that?
I guess the overall shape and pattern,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's spare of color. My palette has picked up a little color in the last few years, but I'm really a spare painter.
Yeah.
I like simplicity,
That's nice.
and that is the very essence of simplicity.
What are the figures on this one?
This
Caleb?
one is sold for
Mhm.
4.5 million
Yeah.
approximately.
And that's probably a painting and not
Right,
not
large,
one of
yeah,
his.
yeah.
This is
large
yeah,
painting.
and it's a
kind of-
large painting. Yeah.
What? Oh my gosh, that's the guy who puts things in formaldehyde.
Right.
And he's Brit, isn't he, from
Yep,
England?
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never quite saw the point of that, but he did it, and he was the first one.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so that gives him the credibility.
Yep.
I was trying to bring up.
This is a print of it.
This is like a print of the
that.
actual sort of sculpture piece. That's it calls it Golden
Golden
Calf.
Calf. Yeah.
So yeah, so Damien Hirst is the name, but there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Sold for 18 million.
Now for the real sculpture, not.
Yes,
yeah,
correct,
the
correct. Not
sculpture
the print.
itself.
No.
Mhm.
All right, I think we're on our last few.
Oh, that's
Bearden.
Bearden,
Yeah,
Romare
correct.
Bearden. Yeah. There's nothing of his that I don't love.
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you a hint on this one. This one is a lithograph print, so it's not as.
But his lithographs would still,
Oh yeah.
because they're not mechanical lithographs, they're his own work.
Gotcha.
And I don't know, thousands of thousands.
Mhm.
It's pretty small, so it's
Oh,
about
yeah.
2,500 for this
Okay.
one. But
Do you know how long ago it was sold?
I think this one was pretty recent, actually. I think I
actually.
found this one.
Interesting.
All right, next one up. I think
Oh, that must be Miro, or
Close. Same
Oh.
nationality.
yeah.
Same
Oh,
country.
Who did the chapel? I mean, the ceiling of that church in
Chagall?
Paris.
Yep.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
Yep.
There
Since
you
it's
go.
Chagall.
yeah. Chagall was magical.
This one, okay, it's 25 million.
That was his
So
broke a
25
record.
million. That's
Yeah,
not too shabby.
Not too shabby.
too shabby. No.
He's doing pretty good.
No.
Well, you did
Yeah,
well.
that was fun.
You-
Yeah.
You yeah.
You're good.
Well, I didn't ace your test, but
Oh,
I didn't
well,
embarrass
Did about
myself.
as well as anybody else.
And I
does
threw
on
in
these
some random local ones,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
you got all the main ones. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
things.
good.
Yeah. Awesome. Any projects coming up you want to talk about, or anything you'd like to promote?
Yes, I would love to tell you about a new project.
Yeah.
You know, the city of Rock Hill is in the throes of reinventing South End.
Mm-hmm.
You know, around Clinton College and the former Friendship
Mm-hmm.
and the high school out there.
Yeah.
And St. Mary Catholic Church is
Mhm.
in that neighborhood. And so the priest there, who I met, but I can't say his name right now,
Mm-hmm.
called Terry Roosh. Do you know
Okay.
Terry?
I'm familiar.
He would be a good interview.
Yeah.
But anyway, called Terry and he said, I want art on our campus. I want drama. I want. And so Terry called me. We talked, and I told him about the city's effort to revitalize South End. And so Terry and I talked about it, and he used to have a wonderful studio where he had plays and films and art shows,
Mm-hmm.
and had to give it up during COVID.
Mm.
And so since then, we invited Martin Lane with the city
Mm-hmm.
to meet with us over lunch one day. And so now Martin has taken it, and he arranged, I think yesterday, they had a meeting with a few other people in the city in economic development. But it's going to happen, and it's going to be wonderful, and the city is going to help them get grants and figure out ways to finance it.
Well, that's great.
So that
Awesome.
excites me
Mhm.
enormously.
Feels like certain areas have been, really ramped up over the past decade, and
Mhm.
other areas definitely are due
Mhm.
for a little
Mhm.
retouching.
Yeah, and it's time for South End
Yeah.
to get revitalized.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Awesome. Any other thoughts, Harriet, Martin?
Well, only just to thank you both.
Well, thank you.
For
Thank
a
you for
lovely
taking the time.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure
Sure.
talking with you both. We really appreciate you joining us. Come back again sometime. We
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
both.
much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us. Stick around next week and see what we talk about on the Bandit Room. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe.
The Bandit Room is a production of Span Enterprises, located in sunny Rock Hill, South Carolina. We've been developing, supporting, and growing successful IRS e-filing and business management solutions since 2010. Go to spanenterprises.com now to learn more. The views and opinions expressed in the Bandit Room are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect or state the opinions of Span Enterprises. No information should be considered as tax, legal, or other professional advice.